Before you decide to become a passive investor, there are a few common return metrics to familiarize yourself with. Today I'll cover the 5 metrics you'll most often see in a real estate syndication deal. So everybody's probably familiar with the initials ROI, or return on investment, but it's pretty broad. ROI can represent a lot of different ways an investment is making money. So in order to understand the true returns of an investment, it's necessary to get more defined in how we're making money and when it's being paid. The first return metric I want to cover is a cash-on-cash return. A cash-on-cash return represents the percentage of income you're making every year on the amount you invested. It's very straightforward. For easy math, if you invest $100,000 and make $7,000 this year, that's a 7% cash-on-cash return. The next type of return to look out for is called a preferred return, or known as a pref for short. Now this is one you need to pay close attention to because many passive investors mistake the cash-on-cash return for the preferred return when they're not actually the same thing. A preferred return is the annual return you, the passive investor, is owed before the sponsorship team shares in any profit or upside on that deal. So if you see an 8% pref, that doesn't mean you're expected to make 8% every year. It simply means that if the sponsor is falling short of paying you that 8%, then that shortfall is going to accrue and is owed to you at a later point in the deal, either in subsequent years through higher cash flow payouts or at the end of the deal when the property sells. A preferred return is essential to you, the investor, because it aligns incentives. Remember, the sponsor team is not going to share in any of the profits of that deal until the preferred return is paid to their passive investors. The next 2 return metrics to learn are an equity multiple and an average annual return. Now the reason I lump these 2 together is because they're pretty closely related. An equity multiple represents how many times your money multiplies over the entire life cycle of the deal. If you invest $100,000 and turn it into $200,000 in 5 years, that's a 2x equity multiple because you 2x'd or 2 times your money. An average annual return takes the total return and averages it out across those 5 years. So in this case, with a 2x equity multiple, that's a 100% return, right? Because anytime you double what you have, that's 100% growth, or in this case, a 100% return. For the average annual return, we take that 100% return divided by the 5 years, which gives us 20% average annual return in this particular case. Last and definitely not least is the internal rate of return, or IRR, which is the most complicated but also one of the most comprehensive return metrics to consider. An IRR allows you to compare investments that are not identical to one another by taking into account the time value of money, not just what you're earning, but when you're earning it. I plan to make a future video solely on this topic where we can look at sample deals, but to give you an extreme example and drive the point home, let's say your goal is to double your money in 5 years. Using that same $100,000 investment example as before, would you rather invest $100,000 today and earn 20% annually, which is $20,000 per year for the next 5 years, and then get that initial $100,000 investment back at the end of the 5th year, all of that to total $200,000? Or would you rather invest $100,000 now with no cash distributions in any of those 5 years and instead receive the full $200,000 at the end of the final year? The answer is pretty obvious, right? You'd opt into the first investment where you're earning $20,000 per year because that way you're earning money back faster. Always remember the time value of money. $1 in your pocket today is worth more than $1 in your pocket tomorrow. The great news is that as a passive investor, you're not responsible for knowing all of the little intricacies that go into an IRR or any of these return metrics for that matter. What's important is understanding the concept of each and what it represents when you see these projections for your particular investment. Another thing it does is lets you focus on the return metrics that are most important to you. A billionaire who doesn't really care about passive income may not put stock into the annual cash-on-cash return. On the flip side, I know people who are full-time passive investors, And they put more weight into the cash on cash return versus a super high equity multiple, for example, because those ongoing distributions are what's paying their bills and funding their lifestyle. So that's a wrap on this topic. If you have any interest in learning more about how to become a passive investor in real assets, please visit rule72equity.com, where there's a lot of free content. Also, I'd love even more to set up a call and chat sometime, so feel free to fill out the contact form on my website or click schedule a call directly. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.